everybody, welcome back to the Opman podcast. As always, the Opman Peter with you to discuss all things operations management. But today we're talking about one thing in particular, that is location strategy. So, location strategy is actually one of the most important decisions that a company can make. And it might sound obvious, but we'll get into more details and you'll see exactly what goes into this and why it's so important. So, starting it off, of course, we'll talk about the strategic importance of location. Then we'll get into 7 specific factors that affect location decisions, ranging from broad to specific. These all need to be considered. Then we'll get into evaluating location alternatives. In particular, we'll discuss 2 methods, the factor rating method and the center of gravity method, and we'll show how these are used with brief examples, and that'll demonstrate how these methods can be used to help make the best location decision possible. And finally, we'll get into a real-world example. Of course, everybody knows Amazon, and they are definitely using the strategic decision-making tools at their disposal to come up with super effective location decisions, and we'll talk about those in detail. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk location decisions. Let's have some fun. So when we're talking location strategies, a good place to start would be, why is this so important for a company to consider when making decisions about their business? So why does strategic location analysis and decision making play such a crucial part in a company's success? I've listed 5 main reasons here. This isn't an exhaustive list, but it just goes to kind of indicate why this is so important. So the first is cost control. Things like rent, utilities, taxes, they can be lower in one area versus another, and so a company may strategically place their operating segments or even their entire businesses in one area over another. Access to labor and resources is important, so being close to skilled labor if that's required, being close to raw materials suppliers, that can actually cut the cost of distribution or the cost of shipping when those raw materials are to be purchased. These next 2 kind of go hand in hand here. So proximity to customers and competitive advantage. I know, for example, restaurants strategically place themselves sometimes around other restaurants, which might sound counterintuitive to competitive advantage. But if you ever think about when you go off the highway, usually a lot of restaurants are located close to each other, not just because people are going to be coming out of their cars off the highway, but because having foot traffic around that area, people might make a last minute decision about maybe they wanted Wendy's to start, now they want McDonald's for whatever reason. That's definitely a possibility and something that restaurants consider. And then finally, risk management. So this can kind of be taken to the extreme a little bit, but I guarantee that companies do think about political instability, natural disasters, weather, things like that, that can pose a risk to the success of a business. Those considerations need to be taken into account as well when making a location decision. So these are 5 primary reasons I think strategic decision making when it comes to location is very important. But of course, there's many more, and we might even come across more as we continue with this episode. So strategy when it comes to location, very important. So now we'll take a closer look at 7 factors that affect location decisions. So going from broad to specific, the first one would be political and economic stability. So of course, a company would much rather be in a place that's more stable in terms of politics, less political unrest, fewer economic fluctuations, more predictability that way. Definitely very important on sort of a high level view. The cultural environment is important. So one company's products might be more suitable for one place versus another, just based on the cultural attitudes that are shared there amongst the people that reside in that area. Market proximity, being closer in terms of physical distance, can be very important depending on the industry when you're trying to be close to your customers. Labor availability and cost. So, of course, ensuring that there's adequate skilled labor if that's what is required, but also the cost of labor. And so, somewhat controversially, labor can be much cheaper, like much cheaper in some countries versus another. And so, it's an important consideration to take into effect and also not to exploit. The cost of resources and infrastructure. So, things like transportation, utilities, that can be very important in this decision-making analysis. Exchange rates and currency risk. So while companies can now hedge against currency risk using derivatives and financial instruments, this is still a very important consideration. And being in close proximity to suppliers and competitors, but also, being the only supermarket in town, being far away from competitors, that's very important as well. So these are 7 factors that affect location decisions, and they must all be analyzed carefully to make the best decision in terms of location. So now we'll take a look at 2 different ways that location decisions are made using different methods. So the first one is the factor rating method, and under this method, factors are assigned a weight, as the name suggests, and then those factors are each given a score for each location, and then they're multiplied by the weight, they're added up to end up at the weighted score. So I've laid out a brief example here, given 4 factors, including labor cost, customer proximity, the quality of life, and tax incentives. And you can see that labor cost is more important to this fictional company than tax incentives, so it has a higher weight. And then city A and city B are scored based on these criteria, and then they're multiplied by the weight to end up at the weighted score. So you can see from this example that even though city A might be more advantageous than city B in some areas, based on the weight that each factor is assigned, city B ends up having the better score. And this can definitely help you kind of take qualitative to quantitative and really help make a sound decision when it comes to these factors and put them in a way that makes sense subjectively based on your beliefs about what's important to your company. So the next method we'll look at is the center of gravity method, and this method helps to find the optimal location based on the location of the markets, the demand volume, and the distance. So this involves placing existing locations on a coordinate grid and calculating the center of gravity by averaging the coordinates weighted by the volume of goods shipped to each market. The coordinates represent the location that minimizes the overall shipping costs. So here I've just done a basic example. We have 3 locations for warehouses, warehouse A, warehouse B, and warehouse C. They each have different X and Y coordinates, and then there's demand. So warehouse A 200, warehouse B 300, warehouse C 100. So what we do is for each warehouse, we calculate the weighted X, which is the X coordinate times the demand, and we do that for warehouse A, B, and C, and then we do the same thing for the Y coordinate. So we calculate the sum of all those. So you can see the sum of the demand is 600. The sum of the weighted X and Y values are 11,000 and 14,000 respectively. And then we divide those weighted values by the demand to end up with certain coordinates. So from this example, you can see that the weighted X coordinate divided by the demand equals 18, and then the same thing doing for Y, it ends up with 23. So based on the center of gravity method, the optimal coordinates for this warehouse company here would be X coordinate of 18 and Y coordinate of 23. So to conclude our discussion on location strategies, there wouldn't be a better example to go to than Amazon. Now, we're all familiar with Amazon for their fast shipping, low shipping prices, but they wouldn't be able to achieve this without a well-executed location strategies plan. So first things first, strategic placement of fulfillment centers. Amazon needs to locate these warehouses and fulfillment centers near major urban areas because that's where most of the customers are, and doing that allows them to reach more people more efficiently, more effectively. They also use what's called a regional distribution model. So instead of a few centralized locations, they now call regions as self-sufficient places in the US, positioning goods closer to consumers, and this helps them facilitate same day and next day deliveries by having these regions that are self-sufficient on their own. They're also looking to move into global operations as they've already done, but a new recent development is they've recently made entry into South Africa, and now they've facilitated same day and next day delivery for South Africans, and they also have 3,000 new pickup locations there. I mean, 3,000 is a lot, but definitely showing their presence in Africa. Another thing, Amazon is looking to expand its presence in the grocery market. They've teamed up with Whole Foods to develop Amazon Fresh, and that's definitely an interesting way that they've kind of taken their competitive advantage in terms of location strategy, added a new aspect to it, and now look to deliver an excellent consumer experience in that regard. And finally, technological innovations in delivery. So they're developing smart glasses for delivery drivers to help provide visual directions so they don't get lost, and this will help them stay on track, stay on time. Definitely a cool new innovation for them. And of course, one day, I think we're all predicting these deliveries might be automated. Now, while this might cost a lot of jobs, I definitely think it's very cool how they're looking to capitalize on technological innovation and definitely, cut costs, maybe ruthlessly, but definitely self-driving delivery vehicles, things like that, on their horizon for Amazon and looking to innovate their location strategy. So these are some key aspects of how Amazon can achieve such massive success, how they can develop such a sterling reputation for being low cost, high efficiency shipper of goods. Post COVID, really, I don't think anyone's made such a big leap as Amazon, and that is how they do it. So Amazon, kudos to you. Thanks everybody for tuning in to the Opman Podcast, episode 2 on location strategies. And if you took anything away from today, it's not the models, it's not Amazon, it's that location strategies are so important for so many reasons and are still, even in today's digital age, a foundational part of opening and continuing a successful business. So if you have any questions about location strategies at all, feel free to leave me a comment on Blackboard. And until next time, stay safe, take care.